Alright, so I think I've got just about all of the epoxy poured. I'm kind of on my last little bit of chasing bubbles. It's kind of funny, you pour all this epoxy, and then really at the end of it, I just really want some really thin lines where the cracks are at, right? So that's always the rub. You pour a lot of epoxy and then you end up just sanding it off. But anyway, I think I've got pretty much all of it done. I got that little hole plugged there. I've got this side over here done. I've got some of the sides spatulaed enough to hopefully catch a few things. I'm not going to go over and above on that. I did have to do, I don't know if you can really see this, I did have to do a lot of work on this bottom side. So it was in grain. I was getting a lot of lateral checks on it. I didn't really like that at all. So I need to do something on that. Like I said, you know, the pretty grain is always really nice to have, and you want to have it. It's gorgeous. I mean, look what God made here. But at the same time, you know, the grain kind of goes all over the place. It's not really usually the best. You know, it's certainly not something you build your house out of. So structurally, the wood is a little suspect. Although it is absolutely gorgeous. It'll make a great tabletop, but I had to deal with some stuff, right? So part of dealing with the pretty is stabilizing the wood. I had a lot of cracks. You can't really see them here, but I had a absolute butt ton of cracks. Like I said, lateral. Some of them were actually going cross grain, kind of like these ones up here. We're actually going, you know, air quotes cross grain because the grain's all over the place. But anyway, this is end grain, so I actually had some going across with the grain in a circular motion. That is not good. So anyway, so I filled all those in. I do have 2 knots on the bottom, but since they're on the bottom, I'm just going to hit them with a seal coat after I sand all this back down. I do have to wait till tomorrow or so because I just poured this and it's real sticky. So certainly can't do any work today. The downside is because I always have this problem because I do a bunch of these, kind of do all the epoxy at one time. I do end up with some epoxy that actually just gets harder and harder, right? And epoxy does. It just keeps curing and gets rock hard. And so trying to get that off usually is a challenge. So because the tricky part is that the epoxy ends up being harder than the wood, and so what you've got to do is you've got to get that off and not dive into your wood, right? So you don't want to leave these spots elevated because you're trying to chew on that. Look at that, got my finger in there. Because you're trying to chew on that epoxy, you don't want to leave those spots elevated, you know, because that's where the epoxy was, and then all of a sudden have issues. If I wouldn't have stuck my finger in there, all of a sudden have, you know, kind of weird flat issues, right? When you're trying to get this all flat, and then it's not flat anymore because you got dives and all sorts of stuff. That's going to be especially tricky here with the bark inclusions that are on this, right? So keep in mind, I buried them in here, but if you remember, there's actually, you can kind of see them in here. There's actually a substantial bark inclusions in this that make this piece, you know, even prettier. I want to keep those. I just wanted to fill in the cracks of those. But bark is certainly a lot softer than you know, the walnut hardwood. So I'm just going to be real careful. What I will do is I will probably just hit it with a heavy grit belt, you know, hand belt sander. I will do that and try to keep it as level as I can and be patient and try not to rock back and forth and all that kind of good jazz to try to get this off. I've never really have discovered a way to do it, if that makes sense. I mean, I've got some really sharp chisels. I can kind of start whittling a few things. I was kind of fiddling with that here today, just in a moment during lunch. So, you know, you can kind of come in here and whittle away at these, but, you know, at the end of the day, it just dulls your chisels and you still don't really get them flat. So, so there is that. I was just wanting to see how this one filled in. I did take some of these cracks, especially these laterals, and I went ahead and just cleared them. At the end of the day, right, epoxy is going to cover this whole thing, so they'll probably will pop out black. But, I kind of wanted to show that a little bit. I'm fine with showing it. I'm not fine with it actually being there, if that makes a difference. Got kind of a one right here. Very stark line right there. But it doesn't feel like a crack. That's the nice part about, to be quite honest, on those highly figured woods like this. Of course, I did do it in there on those other tables. That's one of the advantages of the tabletop pour. I am using the Total Bow epoxy, basically for your clear epoxy coating for bars and tabletops. Actually got a lot more than I kind of anticipated. I didn't realize I bought that much. Don't know what I'm going to do with all that. Guess I better go make some other tables, because I do already have some over there that's a little less yellow than this. But I do have some over there, so I really had enough to probably do the whole thing. I just didn't know, and the hardener. So you get to see my messy kitchen, but the hardener, I don't know why, but it yellows up. I have tried other epoxies. The Eco epoxy I really like. That's actually what we did the butterfly table that is covered up.
I did not pretend to water them. Mitch Hedberg.
And then my Echo is talking to me. Anyway, something about Mitch Hedberg. Good for Mitch. Anyway, so I mean, I've used it. It was really good. It's kind of non-yellowing. The tabletop epoxy for Total Boat, I'll be quite honest, is a lot cheaper than Eco epoxy. The problem I have with Eco epoxy is, a little set of epoxy about that much, so about a half gallon is, right around $70. I got a full gallon, wasn't really paying attention to the size, for like $60 for Total Boat. And then there's other kinds of epoxies out there you'll see all the time. I just haven't used them, to be quite honest. Total Boat's pretty much been in the epoxy business for forever. If I can afford Eco epoxy on a project, I'll be happy to use it. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't say epoxy is epoxy, because it certainly isn't. But at the end of the day, I've been pretty successful with these. So pretty happy with them. I see a lot of folks use them too on YouTube, on the Total Boat stuff. Use it quite a bit for wood turning and just all sorts of stuff. They actually have a huge range of products that you can look into, and they're relatively priced. They're not too outrageous. Anyway, so just kind of putting that out there. Thought I would show you kind of what was left. I don't really see any more bubbles. That's why you do the sanding sealer, by the way. I think I have that on an earlier video, is you put the sanding sealer on and you just don't have bubbles. So that's kind of nice. Anyway, looking forward to getting this one all pretty, get it prettied up and getting it where it needs to be. I am going to go work on the stand. It's sitting over here in the dark. I'm going to, I actually bought this from Amazon because the individual parts were way too expensive at the hardware store. I thought they were pretty neat. However, I did need to buy a new middle piece on this because the middle piece that they give you is 4 inches, and that's just, I can put it all together, get it all lined up, which, by the way, is a lot more complicated, and I'll cover that in the next video. But the 4-inch one was just really loosey-goosey, meaning that I had all 4 feet on the ground, but when I put the pipe in between there, that's what I'm talking about, the little 4-inch piece. When I put the pipe in between there and threaded it, I was hanging on by just a couple of threads. Now, certainly I could go through and tighten up some other stuff and probably get more out of it. But the easy thing I did was I just went and got a 4 1/2 inch pipe and then put it in there. So I'm going to get it done. I'm watching my time. I'm going to get it done And then at the end of the day, I got some primer over there. I'm going to go ahead and take this outside. Make sure everything's all Loctited except for the bottom feet. And then we'll primer the whole thing. Let it sit, dry, make sure it's good to go. And then we're going to go turn around and paint the whole thing with some black enamel that I have. So I'm going to do some black enamel, and that would be really pretty. You know, black looks really nice with that pretty brown chocolate that pops out of the walnut. So you can't really go wrong there. So that'll be nice to have. Anyway, yeah, that's kind of it. So for this episode on the table, so just a lot of touch-up epoxy work, stabilization. Spent a lot of time on stabilization. So a lot of time on stabilization, kind of getting this down. I'm going to try to get some Dremel in there. And actually, I kind of did that flat. I put it on edge to pour it up because there's a lot of structure in there that I wanted to make sure it didn't flake out. I probably will get the Dremel out and round that off a little bit. Maybe. We'll see. Anyway, at the end of the day, I think it's about ready. Just got to wait till tomorrow. Tomorrow, hopefully, I get to start sanding. So that'll be, everybody loves sanding. It's a little late, first day of fall. I got the epoxy, did a lot of sanding today. This afternoon after work. Got the epoxy on, the green, all sanded all down, so the green and the blue and some other little colors I had. So it's kind of funny, you put all that epoxy on there, but really at the end of the day, all I really want is those little cavities filled up. So you have to kind of deal with them. The interesting thing is usually sanding the epoxy takes a lot of work and will take a lot off your stuff. You got to be really careful. I did use the belt sander on it. But anyway, it took off enough that I actually exposed some bug damage right here. So I'm going to hit that actually with some CA glue and try to get that taken care of. But I figured I'd just do a quick video. The sides are pretty, so they look good. There is a little bit of green here, you can see. So I did kind of coat everything with green. The front is pretty, so well, I shouldn't say the front, but I got a little waterfall thing coming down here. This is where that little hole was, so that's really pretty. And then of course some green splattered around, filling in some of the other voids. And this side over here looks really pretty. It's got a really pretty piece of bark that is going to be stuck on it for forever. Again, a little bit of smattering of green here and there. And then the very end of this looks really pretty too. Had some really horrible saw marks on there. So the cool thing is that you've got those kind of filled with some epoxy, so they'll look nice. Everything's kind of rough, if that makes sense. Well, actually, I got it sanded down to 320, so nothing's rough at the moment. But you know, it's not square back here by any means. I'm kind of just leaving it as is, doing a little bit of carving to it, a little bit of structural stuff. But for the most part, I'm just going to kind of leave the table the way it left the sawmill. So anyway, got a lot more work to do on there. I do need to hit it with some sanding sealer. I do want to fill in those bug things there. I will do that tonight. I'm going to fill them with some brown CA glue. I think they'll probably look pretty good if I do that. So I'll do that, and then then sneeze because I'm full of sawdust. There are some dribbles right here you can see. Those are actually in the grains of the wood, but they'll disappear when I hit it with epoxy. So there's that. The bottom is sanded down to about 120, I think I put it on. So there's the bottom. Again, got a lot of nicks and cuts and stuff on it. It was horribly milled. The bottom's kind of pretty still though, so that's kind of nice. Really the next step for me is to kind of just do a little bit of touch-up work, put some sanding sealer on it, and then we'll get it upstairs and start putting the seal coat on. I'm going to seal coat the bottom. I got to watch out and make sure I don't make little pokey holes in this because my little pyramids are pretty sharp. But anyway, I'm going to seal up the bottom and the sides first. Make sure they're good to go, and then I'll do a seal coat on the top. And then at that point, we'll kind of flip it over and do it again. And we'll just do the kind of the final pour on the bottom and the sides, at least 4 of those. So it's not really a pour. Pour will be on the bottom. The sides will just kind of hit with some foam brush and some epoxy. And then at that point, once all that is dry, we'll be able to flip it back over, put some tape up around the edges of this. Of course, I'm probably going to leave the tape off the edges of here, but we'll put some tape up the edges on this, and then we'll do our flood coat, flood pour on the top. And at that point, hopefully, if all that works out, then she's pretty much done. It's just mount it to the base and call it a day and deliver it. So hopefully, absolutely gorgeous. Hopefully you all can see this thing really jumped out at us. Look at that. Just got so much going on. It's just ridiculous. Very pretty. Some amazing, I mean, like uber curl right there. I don't know what in the world that is. I've never seen anything like that, but that literally is curl. The chatoyance right there is just nuts. Really along that whole side. I know I wasn't wearing a respirator, so I'm a little boogery at the moment. But anyway, just a ton of stuff going on. Going to be a gorgeous little table for my son and his girly and kids and all that kind of stuff. I hope they enjoy it for years to come. It's very pretty. I like the green. And of course, this will all chocolate up too, so it'll be just chocolatey. Anyway, actually, what I think I'm going to do is I'm actually going to fill these, and then I was going to hit it with a little bit of Danish oil with the walnut stuff, just to kind of make the grain pop a little bit before I do the sanding sealer. Kind of redundant, but anyway, we'll see. There you go.